Welcome, everyone. Another episode of The Turning Points. Happy Monday, everyone. How are you doing today, Versan?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Got my
I'm
coffee.
doing, I'm having some tea from the Greek mountains.
Mm.
You're having some coffee. It's more late for me, so I avoid coffee at this time. We do have a lot to talk about everything that's happening in the world. It's even difficult to summarize in a few words, but we're going to be talking about the geopolitical tensions happening in the Middle East. The situation is not getting any better. We also have some good news, at least about adoption, XRP adoption, tokenized assets on chain. So we're going to be discussing about that as well. And unfortunately, artificial intelligence is a topic that we can't avoid as well. It's actually about to wipe out thousands of jobs, not only in America, but in every single country. So we're going to be starting with AI. And before we get started, I just want to give one warning to everyone because I got like hundreds of messages in the past days that there are some active accounts of fake accounts on Twitter that they are trying to scam people out of their digital assets. There is recently one fake account that has reached like thousands of views, so it's a lot of engagement, unfortunately. So I'm not back to X. It's a paradox. I am still suspended, but my fake accounts are actually thriving there. Unfortunately, I can't stop them. So be very careful. Don't send your XRP or any digital assets to anyone pretending to be myself on Twitter. That being said, Versan, let's get started with some artificial intelligence news. And we were discussing in private how concerning is that what's going to be the impact of artificial intelligence on the global economy. Not only in the economy, but we're talking also about surveillance.
Yeah. Man, we've covered artificial intelligence quite a bit over here. One thing we have to understand is that we're really entering a period now where a very powerful force in the economy that's taking place, it's not human at all. It's artificial intelligence, right? Make no mistake, this isn't science fiction. What we see happening today is where you could say it's a chilling vision in a sense. A lot of people it'll be disguised as progress and efficiency, but it's not. It's basically building a fully autonomous economy where humans don't actually control the flow of capital. They feed the system that does. So when you talk about AI and layoffs sweeping the industry, really this is just the beginning. And funny enough, the layoffs are not isolated. None of these things are isolated. So it's cyclical with waves of QE as well, and bankruptcies, which is very interesting. As people are getting laid off, there are more filings for bankruptcies, which is cyclical with the QE of money printing, so the big banks can buy up everything else. And that's why I told people repeatedly over the last 3 weeks, there's a massive mergers and acquisitions, M&A cycle approaching. So it's all part of this design, really, to consolidate resources and put them in the hands of a very few people. And more interestingly, this all ties into the whole tokenization aspect. And funny enough, it's like the Matrix, where you remember when Morpheus describes how everyone is feeding like a battery, this artificial intelligence. And that's really what's going on here. So happy to dive deeper into this in a minute. But let me tell you something real quick. I swear to God, this is not just about technology. If you even go to some of the suppressed content from, the Yuval Harari from the World Economic Forum, they describe that this is not just about driving automation. It's really about replacing human beings and the belief systems. So I'm telling you, man, it's a digital blueprint that we talked about last few weeks, where it's like they're building out the next Messiah, which isn't flesh and blood. Unfortunately, it's all code and protocol, and it's supposed to build and guide and influence the entire population under the guise of progress and efficiency. So that's not conspiracy theory. It goes so much deeper. And I think we have to also be mindful of one of the black swans is artificial intelligence, in my opinion. Now, I'm not talking about the whole stock market and investing in AI, but when you start to look at the consequence of ignoring the systemic risks, and when you magnify into all of this, what's really happening here, this is something that most people can't even begin to fathom. artificial intelligence is going to run the entire economy. And it fits right into the narrative of the settlement infrastructure technologies we've been talking about, including XRP, because in an autonomous economy, these AI systems are going to be relying and dependent on each other to move value instantaneously and seamlessly amongst these other brick blocks, different blocks. And that's where we're all going. We're going into a multipolar financial ecosystem. So I'll leave that at that, but we can get back to what Elon Musk is saying. And I'd be very mindful, ladies and gentlemen, do not trust this individual. You go do some research on his mother. I mean, he's not your friend, I promise you. And of course, I think people are going to accept that because that's the popular opinion, is to go with the flow and not to be the contrarian, where most people succeed.
100% agree, Versan. His family is working out on the technocratic movement since over 100 years ago. This is a multi-generational project. And of course, the US government is compliant. Now, when he talks about universal high income, you can see that they are preparing the masses for this transformation. Let's be honest, it's not going to be high income. It's going to be conditional and programmable money. They're going to call it universal high income. That's how they are calling it, but it's actually UBI, universal basic income. And that means that because a lot of people are going to get wiped out of their jobs, they're now going to rely on government money. And with that comes responsibilities. It's a conditional form of money, just like you had in the pandemic in 2019, 2020, where people that didn't comply with this thing over here were not allowed in certain places, were not allowed in the traditional financial system. People lost their jobs because of that. And when you touch people's income, sometimes they get cornered and they have no choice but to comply with everything that the government says. So universal high income is just a form of conditioning human behavior, which is very nefarious. It's actually hell on earth, if you will. So I think we have responsibilities to speak up about what's happening. I feel responsible, and I think everyone watching this live streaming, if you share the same views, I encourage you to start speaking out, because if we don't collectively raise our voices against what's happening, we're going to end up in a very dystopian future in a couple of years from now, being optimistic, if not in a couple of months away. You know, in how fast things are moving out. I want also to share this new feature that AI can now rent human bodies to perform tasks. I'm not sure if you have seen this Versan before, but you now have thousands of people who are subscribing to this platform where AI can, of course, AI, as they say, AI cannot touch grass, but humans can. So there are some tasks that are limited to AI agents, and that means they need to rely on human labor. So now they hire someone to do the most controversial things. They can pay someone $50 and they can do whatever AI decides them to do. So it's quite controversial. I think, of course, we should have regulation about artificial intelligence, but the problem is that the ones that are going to come up with the regulation are part of the problem. So I don't really see a solution. And here's what everyone's missing out. An autonomous economy is going to run on top of blockchain technology, because in the AI realm, cryptocurrencies are going to be the form of digital cash. That means that first you need interoperable systems that's going to allow all sorts of artificial intelligence to run payments, goods and services on top of blockchain technology. And these systems must be interconnected. And that is where it all ties back to XRP, XLM, and a few other digital assets that are going to have a pivotal role on what we call this autonomous economy. So in one hand, yes, it's exciting about being part of this transformation as an investor instead of a late adopter that's going to be enslaved by technology. But in the other hand, it's very scary. It's something that I am not excited about. I don't want to see other people being enslaved by this system. And I know that ultimately, most people will end up not benefiting from this transformation, at least financially. So it's going to be very, very, I don't even know which words to describe, but it's going to be kind of dystopian. And I'm calling everyone to wake up about artificial intelligence. That's not something that's going to benefit humans. It's actually only making them more dumb. That's
Yes.
how I see it.
Thank
It's
you.
not because we have AI that we are becoming more intelligent, but people are becoming more dependent on technology to the point where you can't even find authentic human interactions anymore. Just look on the internet, everything seems out of a prompt, is like all copy and paste. Go for any post on X, look the replies, and you see that most people are not even typing anymore. They are just copy
Copy
and
and paste.
pasting AI garbage, and it's just insane. People can't even write anymore, let
Mhm.
alone critical thinking. So I am not aligned with this transformation, and I want to make as many people aware as possible. Now, the only benefit is that we are investing on the infrastructure of the AI autonomous economy. So, yes, we're going to benefit financially, but when it comes down to limiting freedom in general, it's not going to be a great outcome.
Yeah. Real quick, a few things. First of all, somebody here said Idiocracy wasn't just a movie, it was a prophecy. You are spot on, sir. That was, first of all, a great movie. Edo, you need to see it. It's called Idiocracy. It's really funny because it's the current trajectory of where we're going, where basically, I don't want to ruin it for everybody here, but basically, even in that movie, humans were still working, but the value that they were generating was happening through invisible channels. Interesting. It's very similar to what we're talking about here. Invisible channels that were tracked, measured, and redistributed on machines that were operating consistently in real time. I don't know what you would call that besides an autonomous economy. And sadly, for many people out there, they call this paranoia, doom and gloom. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, this is not paranoia. This is an early warning about the world we're going into. And I think, you know, as we go in this trajectory towards this digital economy, there are so many other layers to all of this that people need to ask. First of all, what is a UBI? A universal basic income is just a digital coupon that expires, programmable. Like, people forget the devil's in the detail. And in fact, this was listed by the Bank for International Settlements, which was established shortly after World War II when they were infiltrated in the whole Nazi regime with the Zionists. I'm not kidding, you know. So they're the ones in charge of the BIS, the IMF. And listen, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, ladies and gentlemen, but they control everything. They really do. And I was explaining to Edo right before we got on this call how challenging it's becoming for me to watch the world unfold the way it is and not be able to speak my mind properly. And people keep telling me to go post on Rumble. First of all, I do have a Rumble channel. The other thing is BlackRock owns 50% of what Rumble used to be. Okay. So they already bought up whatever that is. Now, this is where it gets even more crazy. When I started going down the rabbit hole of artificial intelligence, it took place when the pandemic was taking place. So you guys all remember that without going into too much detail. When the pandemic, the plandemic, whatever you want to call it, was unleashed upon the world, people were tested. And I'm sorry to say, but I think most people failed. But what happened was I paid very close attention to what the World Economic Forum was talking about and many of those world leaders that attended those conferences. And they also warned about a massive cyber attack on our financial grid, very interestingly. Okay. And when you start to look at how a parallel economy is being built and how assets are being tokenized, which is essentially rewriting the rules of what you own and what you do not. I've read these things in detail, but it explains very clearly how essentially all transparency that we have today, and we don't even have transparency, would be wiped out. Records would be cleaned. Basically, all the Epstein files would be erased because there's a cyber attack on our grid. All the crimes committed by Wall Street would be erased. All the unpopular opinions on the internet, for like what a lot of the people are posting on X, would be removed conveniently so they can go ahead and actually achieve their agenda. This was all in there, not so much outlining it the way I just did, but in detail, very carefully how they were writing this stuff. So again, it's an early warning. It's not me being paranoid. It's becoming harder and harder for me to speak the truth and it's becoming more challenging. At the same time, our window of opportunity to invest while we're still doing all trade denominated in dollars is the window is shrinking faster and faster. It's getting harder for us to invest our money. So is this planned out? Of course it is, right? And for those people out there who just keep cheering on the whole tokenization aspect, they don't realize what the hell they're doing. They really don't. I've explained the technology many times, but I've also explained what it actually means as far as changing the definition of ownership. And they are doing this at the highest levels of the Senate Banking Committee here in the United States. So when people are going to fight wars in other countries, first thing you need to ask is, who are your real enemies? They're right here in the United States. They're in Parliament, they're in Congress, they are in the Senate, they're in the White House. And that's what most people haven't figured out yet. So as long as people keep playing this stupid game going back and forth, I promise you, like you said, Edo, most people will actually get wiped out. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And nobody sees the bigger picture about who's controlling the dynamics of how these things are changing and playing out. So I'm optimistic for a few people. And like my father used to tell me when I was a child, few winners, a whole lot of losers out there. And I'm already beginning to see this, not just in the comments, but all around the world. People aren't paying attention. And like you said, everything is a copy and paste. No more critical thinking. No more analytical thought. It's like they're not speaking from their soul. And this is why I don't follow anybody. I don't follow anybody because, you know, I don't like bullshit. I'm sorry. And if you're reading a teleprompter to explain news, that's not journalism. Forgive me. It's not. That's bullshit. If you have to read a screen to tell people what your thoughts and feelings are about the way you see things and break it down, then you have a problem. I'm sorry. It's a shortcut that most people are taking because they don't want to think for themselves. I'm sorry, but these are the facts. So I would say the population is getting dumber and dumber every day as AI is dominating whatever they used to be, human beings with souls. And they sold their souls for money and wealth and crypto even, which is funny. So this goes so much deeper than most people would like to talk about. And I'm sorry for taking up a lot of time, Edo, but I've been holding back on so many things I would like to say. And of course, I will now focus on the big picture as far as the technology and everything.
Well spoken, Versan. I love your father quotes. There will be no winners. I mean, okay, I want to put this in plain words. Iran, even if they win the war, they're not going to be the real winners. United States, if they send ground troops into Iran, they're also not going to be the winners. Israel is getting bombarded by the day. They're also not going to be the winners. So who is the real winner? As you said, Versan, central banks are the head of snake. They have more excuses to print more money. The real winner is the military complex. That's the only one that's benefiting from these conflicts in the Middle East. People are losing their lives so that some bankers, some fat bankers can make money. And that's the reality. Every war is a banker war. And I truly believe that at this point, people need to stop picking up sides and understand that we are being played. Now, I want to bring some major news about what's happening in the Middle East. So the situation is not getting any better. Today, we had the airports of Dubai on flames. Most airline companies are suspending their flights to Dubai. All flights are already canceled in Abu Dhabi until the end of the year. So as you can see, Dubai is suffering major losses in this economical crisis that's happening in the Middle East thanks to the war. But ultimately, that's for me means that the end of the US dollar as a reserve currency is coming closer to an end. I already explained in the past turning point, just let me remove this, how the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, at least for the United States and other countries, because Iran is actually allowing China and Russia to actually sell oil utilizing Russian rubles and Chinese yen. So this is a major hit on the US dollar dominance. I know you have some thoughts about the Strait of Hormuz as well, Versan, and I want you to share that in a second. But the whole point is that now Gulf countries are not able to sell petrodollars, actually to recycle petrodollars back into the US financial market. So I see this as a major hit on the US dominance, as a major hit on the US dollars. And I truly believe that's down the roads, we're going to know the truth if this is intentional or not by the United States, because we can also have false flag events. But the conclusion is that there is a high demand for a neutral bridge asset, an asset that can't be controlled by any sovereign nations. And the answer to that is XRP is the only one that has the liquidity corridors ready in every single corner of the world, which Ripple was building it for over a decade. And that's why I get so surprised when people suggest that you have other currencies that can perform XRP's role without understanding the liquidity corridors. Is something that takes a decade or more to build, and Ripple has built in this infrastructure. So regardless of the war outcome, there will be a high demand for a neutral bridge asset like XRP, and this is exactly why my title for this live streaming is why the war is accelerating the XRP reset. You want to make some comments, Versan?
Yeah, this one's a far out comment, but I don't believe Iran is responsible for shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, even though that's the narrative. In fact, the fact that that's the narrative is why I went to investigate it a little bit more. I'll tell you who I really think is behind the shutting down the Strait of Hormuz to orchestrate the propaganda to justify another war. I think it's the United Kingdom. And it's not going to be a popular opinion, but I think they are behind it because they were the ones who initially gave legitimacy to the state of Israel. And that's all I'll say. To what you were talking about over there is very true. As loss of trust continues, and that is only accelerating, and loss of purchasing power, the world, you could see it's obviously entering a period where we're at the end of a fiat currency cycle, and nations, including individuals like us, we are all looking and exploring for ways to reduce our dependency on a single centralized global government settlement system, which does not have its basis on freedom and trust anymore, anything like that. So I don't think this is really about the dollar vanishing overnight. Reserve currencies rarely just disappear overnight, or but we're seeing a slow, gradual transition into a multipolar world where this is going to be inevitable. But essentially, we're looking for a new settlement reserve system. So the real challenge is not replacing one currency with another. It's about creating a system where other currencies independently can transact amongst each other effectively across borders. So when you look at trade, for instance, trade still needs a settlement system. Liquidity still needs to move between institutions that don't trust each other, for instance. And like no country in the world really trusts the United States except the ones aligning with this New World Order agenda, the Zionism movement. So they still need a neutral bridge asset that doesn't have the friction, doesn't have the cost, doesn't have the risk of global governments or political ties, anything like that. So that's where you start to look at this distributed ledger technology. That's the investment. That's where the money is. Now, who or the value, who is the first and the ones that are so far ahead of everybody who've been building this infrastructure? We keep coming back and repeating ourselves. It's Ripple. Ripple has been building those solutions to address precisely the challenges the whole world is talking about without even describing it. And that's RippleNet. As long as things are going to be running on the Ripple net, you're going to have some exposure to the XRP, because within the framework of what we're talking about here, it's XRP that's designed to serve as a bridge asset, which provides the liquidity between these disconnected currencies like the US dollar. So, I mean, we can go on and on about this. Everyone still treats it like a speculative token simply because they use market cap to measure it. I'm sorry, but that's looking at a very small, narrow-minded view of the big picture. When you start to look at it this way, yeah, you're going to get emotional and you're going to lose confidence when the price moves. But that's the thing. People focus only on the price. They don't ever think about the big picture like some of us do here. You have to understand this is a technology engineered to solve a fundamental inefficiency in global finance that even today you interact with and don't even think about it. Have you ever moved some payments through PayPal? I had a client, he just paid us $3,000 for our package. You know how much money they took out of it? My point is that these are the inefficiencies I'm talking about. And this is why I offer people to pay us in crypto. In fact, I can give you a discount if you pay us in crypto because I don't have to spread all that to the legacy systems. So it's better incentivized, right? So as long as you're treating XRP as a speculative token, I'm sorry, you're not going to figure it out. You're always going to have problems understanding it. It takes a rare mind to understand XRP. I'm not kidding about that. And of course, our friend Nathan put a video together like this, explaining how some of the smartest people I know are attracted to XRP. And I'll tell you the truth, some of the dumbest people I know on this planet, I'm not going to name names here, they're just pushing the Bitcoin narrative simply because they are incentivized to, and they have assets tied in there too. Even the same Bitcoin maxi influencers were investing in XRP while pushing people into Bitcoin. Somebody needs to exit. That's the way I see it. Man, I understand financial markets in such a way that's a bit complex, but more importantly, it's harder for people to understand what I see. And that's because I have an engineering background. I know how to break things down. I know how to dissect them and understand them in a very different way than most people. Engineers in the audience here, I guarantee you they would understand this. So you have geopolitics, you have the rewriting of rules and regulations, that's tokenization, and you have the hidden war of finance that's taking place. And all of it is tied to the geopolitical game you see happening on the main stage. And that's to keep the population distracted, while BlackRock and the bigger institutions quietly confiscate all your assets. So once again, you need gold, you need silver, physical assets, and you need to keep your cryptocurrency on cold storage, where it is not tied to systemic risks in traditional financial legacy systems. And all these exchanges that you and I use to buy cryptocurrency, they are tied to the traditional financial system. They are tied to the traditional SEC rules, the Federal Reserve monetary policies. So get offline if you can with your assets and wait for the right time to use it. And there's a time and place for all of this.
I agree, Versan. By the way, a couple of weeks ago, I received a payment on PayPal. It was about 2,500 euros. It was nearly $3,000. And they took me $180 of commission. It's just insane, the commission fees in PayPal. I was not even aware that they charge that much because, of course, I'm a crypto guy. I don't use that garbage platform, but it's just a reminder of how much of a necessity there is for a settlement system that can process trillions of dollars in less than 3 seconds. And even better, it costs you under a penny to send a transaction on the XRP ledger. So this is, I think, the best way to understand XRP is by simply using it, because once you start using XRP, it really makes sense. And I remember when I first got in crypto back in 2017, 16, basically, I first bought BTC, and I remember moving BTC between my wallets. Of course, I was having no idea of what I was doing back there, but every time I was moving BTC, I was having less money. Like I would move, let's say, $3,000, and I would come out with $50 less. So basically, I was paying extremely high fees every time I was doing a transaction. And that's how I found out about XRP. I went to do some research on how I could move money, how I could move my cryptocurrencies between different platforms, let's say from Coinbase to a cold wallet. And someone in I think it was a Reddit forum or something, say that you could sell the BTC for XRP and send the money in XRP. And I did it. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I was paying like $30 or $50 per transaction, sometimes 20. Of course, it goes accordingly to the network congestion. When I could have had the same outcome by sending the transaction on the XRP ledger, 0% downtime, no risk, no commission, I could just basically do the same for free. So I was just throwing money out of the window. And that's how I got initially on XRP. And then, of course, I started to do my research, and I understood that XRP is much more. But this ties back to what you were explaining, Versan. The point is that we're going to have an autonomous economy, and regardless of people sending XRP itself, because ultimately you're going to have CBDCs built on top of the XRP ledger, which doesn't necessarily mean that the average Joe is going to be holding XRP. Actually, quite the opposite. But XRP is still required to activate every wallet that's transaction on the XRP ledger. Second, once you tokenize on top of the XRP ledger, you also create a high demand for the native asset on chain, which is XRP. So you have hundreds of companies building strategic XRP reserves. Every transaction on the ledger, either you're going to pay for goods and services. I already explained here on the turning point. We're going to have some sort of universal basic wallet with all of your finances connected. And at that point, anyone transacting on top of the XRP ledger also is going to be contributing for more scarcity on the underlying asset XRP, because every transaction burns a small amount of XRP, which might seem a small amount at first, but let's say if you have 1 billion people transacting on stablecoins built on top of the XRP ledger, let's go even deeper. Not 1 billion people, because now you're going to be having robots, AI agents that are going to be utilizing stablecoins built on top of the XRP ledger. So all of these movements are going to create a high demand for XRP. And remember, the price of an asset really comes down to one simple denominator. It's basically buyers versus sellers. In the moment you have more people buying the assets because they need to activate wallets, they need this asset is utilized on every single transaction. You have XRP ultimately replacing Nostro-Vostro accounts, which is one of the primary goals that Ripple had for XRP. Besides being a world reserve currency, it also means that central banks and private banks, which, by the way, we have over 25,000 private banks in the entire world. So just imagine if each private bank has to hold, let's say, 1 million XRP or 10 million XRP, which is a more reasonable amount, and they have to lock this XRP on Nostro-Vostro accounts. Of course, these XRPs are going to be transacting back and forwards, but they need to hold a substantial amount of XRP in order to do that. So that means there's going to be high demand for XRP, which ultimately, and this is not a financial advice, but it's going to increase the price. And that's why we are positioning ourselves and understanding this transformation, which unfortunately, I would say that only 0.0001% of the population is paying attention to this transformation. Everyone now is busy. Yeah.
Yeah, I said you're modest.
Yeah, probably modest. I think even lower, right?
I don't know, but I think within the XRP community, even fewer understand it. I really believe that. And that's why I always see the same questions from the same people over many years, right? And it keeps focusing on price, price, price. Now, I understand that. And I'd love to see a higher XRP price. Believe me, I've been here for a very long time. Thankfully, unfortunately, I got in early. And in fact, I was telling people to get in at 18 cents on Instagram a long time ago. But the story about XRP, and that's kind of how I started one of my articles, which seems to be suppressed on X. If you guys can read it, I would encourage you to. And I explain how the story about Ripple and XRP is about the convergence of regulation, monetary policy, and digital asset infrastructure. Based on that alone, you start to look at the entire crypto ecosystem. And you look at Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin's value is determined by perception, and you could say it has its macro cycles that are cyclical with QE, quantitative easing, and other things of that nature tied to the corrupt debt-based Ponzi scheme. Anyways, but XRP's value is going to be determined, and I keep saying is going to be. It's going to be determined by the velocity, to your point, the demand for settlement, liquidity, and macro utility, big picture stuff, the thing most people won't even talk about. And I've listened to a lot of XRP holders, all right? They'll explain the relationships and things of that nature, and that's okay, great. But there's another way to look at this when you start to understand. If XRP is already embedded within these central banks, these sovereign settlement systems, and that much is a fact, that means tokenized markets, which haven't come into fruition yet. We're still waiting on certain regulations, the IMF and BIS frameworks that have been put together but not implemented yet. that means eventually the price of the XRP is certainly going to have to reflect the global demand for it. It's that simple. And that's basically the point where people call it the flip of the switch moment. And I don't care if they're going to flip the switch or not. Inevitably, it's going to get to that point. Most likely a geopolitical crisis that will orchestrate this. I've explained that many times. But this is where the point where XRP transitions from a token to a monetary instrument globally. And that's what we talked about with Jesse recently, about how the IMF classifies XRP as a world reserve currency. That's going to be, then it's going to be priced according to the value of the global settlement system that it underpins. Like, do you understand that? If you do, then you start to realize, you know, that's where I think most people would say that the design and architecture behind XRP was engineered to scale volume and value together. And that's why when you look at the technology, it seems that the system that they created is designed to support the full range of economic activity. That means from retail, which is probably at the bottom of this list, to central bank settlements, which is in the trillions, and then fractional precision of algorithmic efficiency, tokenization. Like, that's when you start to look at the mathematics and apply it to scarcity. I mean, it's really interesting. You know, I find this stuff fascinating. And it's funny because it took Vindel and I, my brother, a week to figure this out. Not to this level that we're talking about it now. That was, 8 years ago. But it took us a week, Edo and the community, I'm not kidding, to figure out that XRP was going to be the replacement as the neutral digital reserve asset, bridge asset. You can call it whatever you like. It's going to replace the hegemony status of the dollar. 100%. The dollar will remain because it is not about replacing the dollar. It's about replacing the inefficiencies and the hegemony status that ties the dollar to the rest of the world. People don't want that anymore. I don't even want it. Why the hell do I have to become victim of a central bank that doesn't give a crap about me and monetary policies that are designed to hurt me, not help me? I'm going to walk away from that. I'm going to look for alternatives. And that's why I'm holding on to gold aggressively and heavily. Because for me, until we understand how this is going to play out, gold is the safest asset. And that's why they reclassified as a tier 1 asset. They started buying it. They are manipulating. I was going to mention this earlier. Last thing, what I'll say about the gold and silver. Gold and silver are aggressively being manipulated and deliberately suppressed, while the very same institutions suppressing it are quietly accumulating it. Ladies and gentlemen, these prices that you see on silver, copper, platinum, and gold, these are opportunities for those who understand the underlying dynamics that we're talking about here. So I treat volatility as opportunity, always. It's an incredible time to be alive, but also very scary.
Love your explanation, Versan. They want all the gold because gold is not a form of programmable money. Nobody can claw it back. Once you hold it, it's truly yours. That's true ownership. So, by the way, I did a video, Versan. I loved it. I did a video about your video this week. I think I shared the link with you. And I remember that I was watching this video and also before, and you have been for over a year. And I want to give you full credits for that. For over a year, no, sorry, for like the last 5 years, you were telling people, get some gold when gold was $2,000. Get some gold when gold was $3,000. Then in this video, it's from a couple of months ago, you were telling everyone that gold would hit $5,000. And you said it's very confidently. By the time gold was below $4,000. So your predictions were very accurate. I know that everyone that took consulting sessions with you has massively benefited from this transformation. I think a lot of our audience as well that has been paying attention. And this is why I have been buying gold. I have been buying silver. And now I am looking to buy copper. By the way, I mentioned this last week also in the Strait of Hormuz. It also passes the sulfur. So basically they can't make sulfuric acid. I think 45% of the global supply of sulfuric acid, which is utilized for the extraction of copper. Someone also put in the comments that is also for silver. I don't know about that. I know that they need sulfuric acid for copper. So this is also another thing that can cause especially the price of copper to rise in the next couple of months. So I do recommend everyone, and you gave me this call as well, Versan. I am very thankful for that, for everyone to do some research on copper and the industrial demand that there is for copper. Copper is a highly liquid asset, so it's also something to consider. By the way, Versan, I was checking. I have some notes here. Yeah. We cover most of the topics that we promised to discuss today. I don't know if you want to take some time to answer the audience, or you just want to go like freestyle and we can talk about other topics.
Yeah, we can do in between freestyle and answer some of the questions and kind of integrate it into what we're talking about here. People keep saying, okay, Grayscale says XRP and others will be repriced when clarity passes. Okay, well, it makes more sense because if we have clarity, we're certainly going to have transparency. Therefore, you're going to have a repricing of certain assets that provide a real value based on its utility. So in the grand scheme of things, I think that's very good. We've also covered that many times and explained how we're entering the phase now where the transparency is going to unfold more aggressively because of the geopolitical landscape. There is some battle going on. In my opinion, I think this has already been decided. I think this is just a little controlled opposition to give us the belief and illusion that we have a say in how this plays out. I do think it's been decided, but absolutely, when you have clarity and real utility, real demand for this asset that has gradually been integrated into every layer of the financial system, then yes, I do see price appreciation. Absolutely.
There is some questions that I also want to cover. Wow, this is a great comment as well. They say, she says, Michelle says they need sulfuric acid for nickel and fertilizer. So it's also for agriculture as well. I also want to mention that. Great comments. I think you covered this one, Versan. Grayscale says XRP and others will be repriced when Clarity Act passes. By the way, this quote comes from the head of research from Grayscale. I did a video about this yesterday. You want to make some comments on this one, or you already covered in the previous answer?
Yeah, I just covered it a moment ago. Yeah. But you know, we've covered this a long time ago as well, multiple times.
This is we have SHX, one from super chat here.
Yeah, SHX. I am. What does it say here? I'm sorry. All right. Listen, guys, you guys got to stop attacking each other in this crypto ecosystem. Listen, I don't believe in in institutional custody. That's just an opinion. I believe there are pros and cons to all of this, but in my opinion, and I've addressed it many, many different times, it's nothing that I have against Jake. I'm friends with Jake, ladies and gentlemen. Please respect that. But I don't trust institutional custody for my own reasons. That's it. If you align with my reasons, then you'll understand it. I've explained this countless times. Listen, I think everyone should be concerned about their assets on chain, vulnerable to the systemic risks of the financial system. I'm not saying there's corruption in certain places, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised. Anything that's tied to the traditional financial system, I think, is at risk. And if we do have some cyber attack, you lose everything. Everything needs to be off chain for now. And this is not financial advice. This is advice that I would share with my dear friends and my community, especially. And yes, I'm very confident in SHX. I own quite a bit of SHX. I've shared this countless times as well. Long-term SHX position, I haven't touched it. Short-term SHX position that I actually swing trade on it. So every time SHX shoots up with liquidity cycles as they pump more fake money into the economy, I sell 80%. I rotate it back into gold and silver at higher prices. I keep some cash aside, and I start buying back those dips with the extra profits. My long-term SHX, I just continue to accumulate and put it away for long-term. I don't touch it. I keep my hardware wallets separated. So I don't have I have the discipline not to even touch it. And that's why I have 8 hardware wallets. And, you know, going back to the whole institutional custody thing, when we had Jay Claver on our show, do you remember when I mentioned I had 8 hardware wallets and he said he had 12? So my point, though, is that if he has 12 hardware wallets, I guarantee you there's some crypto in those wallets, right? So, you know, I think it's a good idea to have some cryptocurrency or digital assets that you own, and you work hard for your money. I understand that. So you need to protect it. Here's a problem with I Trust Capital. I'll share this with you guys. Oh my God, I hope I don't get in trouble for any of this. I'm just being honest. But I Trust Capital, I just found out through certain clients that when they invest in XRP and then they go and put their XRP on I Trust Capital, when you want to leave I Trust Capital, you can't sell it in XRP. You can't move it in XRP. You have to sell it into fiat currency. That's not good. I don't know what else to say. So be mindful of that. Yeah, I know he does. I don't agree with it. I love my brother, but we have different views on certain things, and there's nothing wrong with that.
It's actually healthy, right? You don't have to agree on everything.
I have been the contrarian since I was a little child, and it has served me so well, like you wouldn't believe it. If everyone goes in this direction, I go in that direction. I just have to, because it tells me there's a trap being set. It tells me that everyone's following the herd, and I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to be different. And let me tell you something. I manage my mom's assets. You know, she could trust anybody in the family. She trusted me. I've made more money in this family than anybody. And I think it's because I'm very aggressive, but I'm very strategic long-term as well. So yeah, I got you covered. And I've been outlining this information with my dear friend Edo and colleague for years now. And we're really just repeating everything with a different perspective. Killiman Brown's great too, but again, it's tied to those same systems. It is. Something happens, you could lose everything. Did you know government seizures can take place too? Interesting. Well, if certain cryptocurrencies that we're invested in are now part of the strategic reserve, did you know that means if they change the regulatory landscape, of course, without your consent, you have no consent in all of this, or rewrite the rules of ownership via tokenization, which they've actively been doing. In fact, they've been rigging the international laws of finance to accomplish this. Then let's say you have your assets there and they shift the regulations because of some threat, geopolitical, financial threat, liquidity crisis. Yeah, they'll confiscate it in a heartbeat and they won't even question it. And it's not yours anyways, because it all falls under the same jurisdictions of the regulatory landscape. What I'm trying to tell people is that I really think that institutional custody is a trap. I really believe that. Oh, well, you're not allowed to own your digital assets. There's who the hell knows? You don't know that. You're just speculating. Now, I speculate the same too, but I do have assets that are on chain and off chain as well. See, so I've diversified my risk. All I'm saying is being a contrarian. That's it. You know.
Likewise, Versan, and honestly, if you have your cryptocurrency sitting in cold wallets, nobody can touch it. Nobody can seize it.
Unless I haven't been hacked in 7-8 years, man. I've never been hacked.
It's impossible. When the funds are on the blockchain and there's no human mistake, they can't seize your XRP. They can't confiscate XRP. There is no clawback feature that applies to the native asset on the XRP ledger, which is XRP. So if you have XRP sitting in cold wallets, you can just sleep very peaceful at night. That's how I see it.
Look at this question. Like I respect the questions, guys. I have a lot of respect for everybody asking these questions. I don't think there are any stupid questions. I think asking questions is the right way to do this. What about gold and silver with I Trust Capital? Listen, we are in a real turning point of history right now. Wealth is being rewritten. It's being redistributed amongst the wealthy. It's being manipulated. It's being confiscated. Did you know certain companies and banks right now in the United States are actually borrowing people from accessing more than $10,000? If it's your money and you worked hard for it, your labor is being diluted and they take control away from you. Why the hell would you have your gold and silver in some sort of form of ETF where it still falls under the same jurisdiction of regulation we just talked about? So I encourage you to own physical gold. If you cannot buy gold or silver locally in your area, buy it from my dear friend Andy Schechtman. I'm serious. If you cannot buy it locally in your town, in your city, buy it from my friend Andy Schechtman. And I'm happy to provide the link here if you don't mind while we're talking. But I encourage everybody to own physical gold, ladies and gentlemen, and physical silver. And if you think these prices are cheap, wait until you have some form of transparency. Maybe not. Okay. My friend Francis Hunt disagrees with that fact. He thinks the corruption is going to be brought in, and I agree with him. However, when you start to look at the cycles, you start to look at how much circulating money there is out there and fiat paper, and you factor in the global debt, and you factor in all the derivatives masking itself under the illusion of sustainability and stability, then bang, you have nothing there. Gold can easily climb to $20,000, $30,000 when you factor in the value of all these things. Not to mention, if it becomes a world reserve currency as far as the collateral layer, then gold can easily climb. You can have a revaluation of the gold price. It's happened before. Own your physical gold. Be in control, ladies and gentlemen. Stop giving away control as these totalitarian systems we just talked about are slowly creeping behind us.
Nice one, Versan. That is another interesting question, which I will share my personal experience, and maybe you can help them out as well, because this is a bit more tricky than buying gold and silver. So someone asks about buy physical copper and how. So I'll start with my experience. When I first looked at buying copper, I had no experience at all. And I realized that at first I was going to buy 5,000 euros. And that was about, if I'm not mistaken, like 580 kilograms of copper. So it's very difficult to storage copper at home. So I found some way with a third party that I trust, a member of my family, in a hidden location, also because now they are targeting copper storages. So have this in mind. You can find on the internet articles. I speak multiple languages, so I could verify this myself. In every single country that you can possibly think, there are operations of people stealing copper. There is an international group behind this operation because I 100% believe they know there will be institutional demand for copper. So this also suggests that's going to appreciate in price. You also have other options, and like I know it's more difficult to buy physical copper because it's difficult to find the place to leave it. It's not like golds that you have like a small piece of gold and you can leave at home or in the bank. Versan, you want to give your thoughts? I know that you can also get exposure through the ETFs, or you can simply actually use leverage and actually open a long on copper with very low leverage, but then you are also exposed to market manipulation. So I don't recommend it, although it's an alternative. I got, for example, a notification from BitUnix exchange. They now have futures for copper. So it's interesting because if they are listing copper, that is because they expect volatility. So you have these three options. I don't know, Versan, what do you think is the best one?
When it comes to copper, well, gold and silver, I think you should own physical, 100%. Don't speculate on it. Treat it like money. If you have extra cash flow and you have lots of wealth, yeah, I would tell you, even as a legal counsel, I would tell you to give yourself some control to the upside of the gold and silver, derivatives, the leverage. But I wouldn't recommend leverage, but the ETFs out. Absolutely. When it comes to copper's a bit different. Copper, I do own quite a bit of physical copper, but for the majority of people who are just new to getting investing and they're starting to buy their own assets and feel control, and this is very good, it's very empowering, I would encourage people not to go buy physical copper like you and I are. See, I can buy copper because I can afford to. What I mean is I can afford not just to buy it and hold it and actually not even gain value on it for a very long time. You know what I mean? A lot of people are looking for quicker returns, more upside. Then in that case, I would recommend the ETF, even though the ETF has its own, problems, which are tied to these systemic risks in the systems. So for most people, I would say not even to get into copper, honestly speaking, to the majority of people. I would be focusing on silver right now. Silver has a lot more upside, and I think gold does too. So not too much copper. If you are very wealthy, I would definitely encourage people to have some exposure to copper, because there's a real play there. Copper is definitely going to make a very big jump. And that's essentially what's happening globally. You have all these nations and sovereign states fighting for resources ultimately. And, there's going to be a repricing of all assets across the board. And I think that fits into the bigger conversation about a currency reset, is basically pricing assets outside of dollars, something else, maybe tying everything to gold, and if that is the case, then gold would significantly have to be higher. It could be oil too. Oil is the real driver of markets too. Energy. It doesn't have to be oil, but energy is my point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Copper is more complicated. It's also, well, gold is very small. You can carry around copper. You can fulfill an entire room at your place just with copper. So, although it's a good investment. So there's another question here. Would you agree that, and by the way, super chat, thanks for that. Would you agree that clarity and adoption is more important than current macro events?
No, I think clarity and adoption is surface level content for the masses. I think the macro events are the real drivers of all of this. We did a video recently, and in fact, I did one solo a few days ago explaining how geopolitical conflicts are always tied to the grand scheme of these designs to destroy something so you can roll out something new. History shows us this happens every time. So I read a lot of history. I read this book twice. I lent it to a friend and she never returned it. So I ended up getting another one again. So to your question, it would really be in here in this book. This is Ray Dalio's The Changing World Order. Now explain basically how these shifts happen. So current macro events, I would say, are way more important. And most people don't focus on that. They focus on the minutia. The minutia is the headlines, and the headlines are written by AI too. So, it's like, what are you reading? What can you trust? And that's why I encourage people. Like, I did a video recently and I tried to use AI to cut out stuff, and dude, it was awful. And I was really upset when I uploaded it, and people were saying thank you, and I appreciate that, but that's not who I am. I like to speak freely like this, but anyways, yeah, I don't know.
But I tried to use AI to edit videos. It was a disaster. I never ended up uploading it. This is, by the way, the thing that I most hate about content creation is editing my videos. I do have to get my video editors back. I was cutting down some expenses after I was banned from Twitter. And just answering this question, I think you gave a very good answer, Versan. Clarity is one part of the puzzle, but the adoption is going to happen because of the macro events. So it's basically the foundation of the transformation is on the macro events at all. So let's see if we have too many questions. I wish we had time to answer all of them.
Yeah. I'm doing a podcast with CoinDesk here in an hour, so I have to be ready.
Yeah. So no, and just final question I want to answer. I say this in the beginning of the live. I am not back on Twitter. There are hundreds of impersonating accounts that are scamming my followers, pretending to be myself. So be very careful with that. There is one recently that's going viral. If you see that account, please report and don't engage. With that being said, any final thoughts, Versan? We are 60 minutes already.
No final thoughts. Just want to say thank you to everyone for all your support, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, everyone. Drop your location in the comments as always, so you help us to boost the algorithm. And yeah, I see some comments. It's very frustrating that the real me is banned on a platform where my fake accounts are allowed and they are scamming people. So it's just the world we are living in right now.
It's getting out.
Anyways, yeah, it's unbelievable. Thank you, everyone. We're going to see you next Monday.
Yep. All right. We'll see you soon, guys. Take care. Thank you, everyone. Share the video.
Yeah.